Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for Captain America Sentinel of Liberty Issue 5. Pretty cool looking cover here, of course emulating the whole shield and everything with the cracks and everything, with the hole in the center and all that. Really like that, and I really enjoyed this issue. It definitely took it into an interesting kind of perspective, and by the time we kind of got to the end, I could kind of see how the Revolutions thing was kind of playing out. Not granted, not the whole thing, but kind of understanding what he was trying to do with this whole thing. So we start off and we see that the Revolution is having this powwow with the other people, and they're like, "Oh, so you finally did it. You're pretty much bringing Cap to the Capitol and everything." And it's like, you're only gonna get caught in the fire. And the Revolution's like, he's done trying to win the game by your rules, and the game's too long. He gives a video on a drive to one of them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're pretty much predicting that it'll be failure." You go off like talking about how he went off half cocked on a drunken night on Franz Joseph Street, and that it's like, they're like, "All right, you want to stop playing? Fine, but try not. Let's see here. They'll not weep for him or the ones that get killed in his name," as we see that Cap is flying in this kind of old school kind of plane, Freedom's Flight, which is kind of cool. Him calling it a classic. And the pilot's like, "I don't know if this Shadow Capital's actually down there because the radar's not really doing anything there." And of course, Steve's talking about how he trusted his sources in the Redacted. And let's see here. Bucky's asking for any last words, and Steve pretty much says that he will back whatever play he's got, as the Redacted pretty much says that they're here, and they jump out and pretty much start getting there, as Steve is pretty much thinking about like the nature of war and everything like that, thinking back to December of 44, Frozen Frontline and Death, and how a lot of people like say that war is glory, but they've never really seen it even when you captured it. But the real war, he says, is invisible, the churn of bodies that makes only orphans and widows, and he knows what war feels like. And then he starts juxtapositioning what he thinks the shield means of like hope, pure hope, versus what the outer circles thing is, where they get to the Capitol and that symbol means war, which is interesting that you can have a symbol mean different things to different people. I like how they're able to kind of like do that. So Steve pretty much gets the Redacted to go there, get in there fast, get in there loud, and show the others the freedom you've taken, as he just starts going and wrecking pretty much shit. Then they pretty much get their tithes to pretty much come at Steve and Bucky, as we see them in their pretty much holographic kind of form, pretty much giving us an exposition info dump, if you will. But it's done in at least a way that's kind of interesting, as they're talking about how they've mainly been a spectator to the only game that matters, the Sentry game, and talking about Agents of Chaos, thinking that these guys are the monsters when they're just the survivors, and how getting through the birth of the Sentry, the world painted itself in blood and bone. They're the children of that kind of Armageddon. So they don't control, they inspire, they try and bend the world and get those leaders with true power to like tithe to them, pretty much soldiers, equipment, all that. You see Shield, Hydra, AIM, all that kind of stuff, because they believe that chaos is worse, and that this is their way of controlling and having a controllable kind of system. Because the game of the 20th century ended in a draw, because they were cooperative, the money, the machine, and himself power. And there's a century like men like Steve could grow into icons, and so he makes his next move that Captain America dies, and that's of course when the tithes start coming at him. And I think that's definitely an interesting kind of take, that they don't see themselves as villains, which normally villains do not see themselves as such, but this is an interesting kind of motivation of They had seen certain kind of chaos things going on and decided to be the survivors of that. Since they'd survived that kind of thing, they wanted to make a more kind of control system with this, which doesn't really look like that much of control. I mean, granted, since we're outside of that system and seeing it's like there's been like horrible shit going on. Like, how could you say that this is more of a form of control? And granted, they could probably try and show that to us, but it still looks like you're just making the chaos for other people, and it's not as affecting to you. So, Bucky's like, this wasn't part of the plan. And Steve's like, yes, this was. This is the part where we win. As they pretty much start, like, fighting through the rest of the Tithe soldiers coming at them. And, of course, Steve's pretty much like, okay, these soldiers come from everywhere, from everyone. They could have been us, and they practically are. And he's, like, trying to sit with no killing and how hard of a rule that is on Bucky. And that he can feel that tiger in Bucky's trigger finger. And he's talking about how the way he holds back amazes him. It always has, as they start like pretty much punching through a lot of other people. And then Bucky, of course, does need some help, as he's like, I'm opening up, and Steve's like, no. And then we see this other kind of Tithe soldier pretty much like, I gotta shoot you. And Steve's like, I know, those suits are rigged to explode if you disobey, tied to a central server. Trust in me, you can put that gun down. And then we see that he unmasks himself and puts down the shield, being like, I'm going to do the same thing, which is a great thing that Steve would do. And then this helps inspire her to do the same, and she's surprised when it doesn't kill her. She's like, what? And it's like offline, and she talks to her other friend Paolo, and it's like, she doesn't know what happened, but she thinks that they got saved by Captain America. She's like, no, you saved yourselves. And as for the bomb deactivation, someone else you can thank for that, as we see the Redacted pretty much taking it out. He, of course, gets introduced to her as Stacy Armitage from MI-13, and he's like, get the others out of here. And she goes, yes, sir. And he's like, please, just call me Steve. And it's like, I love those moments where Steve, like, the creative team gets that. That is the shit that makes Steve Steve. Those little interactions, those are the cool things. So now we pretty much get to Bucky's part. He's pretty much saying that it was luck and that Steve tends to bet on good and it tends to pay off. And they're hoping that somebody's still home, and Bucky wants pretty much to stop the people using them as pawns as they smash in, and that's a really kind of cool thing. I love, this is really good art because you see them smashing in here, and this is just a really good, like, cool guys don't look at explosions kind of moment with the Redacted. It's just really nice. So then we pretty much get to the portion where the Revolution gives us more of a lowdown on how Bucky has been integral to what's been going on with this. Let's see here. So, of course, the Revolution apologizes about the lights because you missed the others. They gave that ominous speech and went to ground. He's been waiting to have so long to have this conversation with Bucky that he's been used, discarded, saved, used again. Like, he had to involve Rogers just to get Bucky here, and he's like, if Bucky wants to have liberty, true liberty, he's got to take it, and he offers him a pistol to pretty much shoot him. And of course, Steve's trying to ask actual questions, being like, who the hell are you? Well, like, what are you playing at? But, of course, Buck's like, you said you'd back my call, and Steve's like, you can't play his game. That's how he wins. You always have to watch out for how you're playing their certain thing. And this seems to be pretty much getting to a point where the Revolution doesn't want to play this game anymore, and that he's trying to set up the next person to take over Bucky as the Revolution. As he's like, that the Revolution says it's not really a choice. He has plenty of experience on the board, and what he doesn't know is that he can sit at the table. Again, more alluding that he would be like the next kind of Revolution dude, and that he just has to take it. And Steve's like, we didn't come here to kill, and Bucky's like, you should go. And Buck's like, I don't need your little pistol, I brought my own. and that it's all he's thought about for months, and that we learned that in this kind of info that we got here, that his dad was set up to die, so he would be adopted by the army so they could kill for them, and then he'd be right next to Steve to control him. And when that didn't work, he'd pull the strings to make him the Winter Soldier. Everything he's done has been linked to this. It's like, that's definitely an interesting kind of way to kind of do it, because ever since we've seen Bucky come back as the Winter Soldier, he has had a crazy time trying to figure out his whole kind of legacy. And this is some interesting new info that we're seeing, and I'm intrigued to see how this kind of works out. It's interesting to kind of tighten it all up and kind of make it a little bit easier to follow to a degree. And then he's pretty much being like, it's not my sin that did anything, it's theirs. And then we got another kind of cool 9-panel shot as we see Steve standing in between him and the Revolution as Bucky's telling him to get out of his damn way, and he's like, I'm not in your way, Buck, you're in your own, you are. Don't give in to vengeance. And of course, Bucky goes, this isn't vengeance, Steve, it's a revolution. And it's like, that kind of like cements, it's like, so this seems to be kind of like how these players in the Outer Circle, I guess, would get new kind of blood into the game. Say someone wants to get out, unless somebody tries to do some kind of coup, they all embody certain kind of things. So this would definitely be the way that the Revolution one would be, as Steve's pretty much trying to like talk him down before Bucky shoots through Steve and hits the Revolution. And that is just a crazy looking panel. Page, and that's where it ends off. It's like, okay, we'll have to see if the Revolution actually dies, if this was part of their play, how Steve's going to react to this, how Bucky's going to react to this. Is Bucky going to become the new Revolution? Is this their whole kind of thing of, is it going to be where Bucky has to make it look like the Revolution was killed so that way they could get more information on the Outer Circle from a previous member of the Outer Circle, and Bucky now taking over as the Revolution. We'll have to see how this plays out. There can be a lot of different kind of ways for this to go, rather than just Bucky going down the path of vengeance and violence that he's usually been put down as the Winter Soldier, as he tries to wrestle with that history. And Steve knows that and tries to help him through that, and we'll have to kind of see how Bucky's able to kind of handle what goes on with that. So I did like this to kind of see. We got a lot of good pertinent information, and we still got action and plot movement going forward. That's a hard thing to kind of balance. This one was definitely more of an information heavy kind of one, so you kind of had to take points to actually lay that out. The history of the Outer Circle. Well, not its extensive history, but enough of it to get us to understanding what their goals and motivations are. And then Bucky learning what's been going, like us learning what Bucky has learned about his past and his ties to the Outer Circle and everything going on with there. So I think they did a good job with this, and I can't wait to see what goes on next. So those are my opinions on the issue. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.